Welcome to Forum at 360. I'm Scott Burton, the producer of The Flying University, a short documentary about a literature and philosophy class inside Juneau's Lemon Creek Correctional Center. Tonight, we'll examine the importance of education on the inside and take a look at how it and other community resources can help incarcerated people successfully re-enter our communities. Joining us is a member of the Flying University and the director of a Juneau transitional living home for women called the Haven House, Kara Lee Nelson. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Glad to be here.
And to her left is Brandon Johnson, a member and student at the Flying University. And he is the person that leads the class at the Flying University, UAS Professor Sol Neely. And also a member and a student of the Flying University, Nathan Block. A member and student of the Flying University, Sean Jessup. And a member and student of the Flying University, Marcos Galindo. Saul, I would like to start with you, if I may. For folks who haven't seen the documentary, tell us about how this got started.
Okay, well, I started teaching in prisons when I was working on my PhD at Purdue University in Indiana, and I really enjoyed it. I later on met somebody from the University of Oregon who was teaching courses in prisons. It's called the Inside Out Prison Exchange Program, and what was so unique about that program was that they bring university students inside the prison for mutual and collaborative study. I love that idea, and so when I was hired at UAS, I began to inquire about how I could get into the prison and teach philosophy and literature courses. Somebody finally put me in touch with educator Paul McCarthy at Lemon Creek Correctional Center, and he picked it up and ran with it. And in fall 2012, I taught a special topics class. It was called Fugitive Thought, Philosophy and Literature Born of the Prison. And I was able to bring, I think, about 16 students in that semester. We only had 3 weeks together as a combined class of inside students and outside students. But the following semester, we were able to pull off 6 weeks. And then the following semester, 9 weeks. And then finally, we hit the 10 weeks, which is the normal seminar length at this point. So. Okay.
Nathan, I know that you are one of the original members of the Flying University. Marcos, you are too. Nathan, tell me about the first time you met Saul, the first time you came to this class. What emotions come to mind? What was it like?
Well, I had known Saul prior through some friends of ours. I'd met him once or twice. I didn't really like the guy. He was canoeing all by himself, basically yelling like a pirate. It was a beautiful thing. Made me realize I needed to go to school. But I was working for Paul McCarthy in the library, and I heard him talking on the phone and mention Saul's name, and I was like, whoa, what's going on here? He kind of gave me a little gist saying that they were going to have a class. A couple weeks later, I got fired. I earned it. I had gotten very depressed after I got sentenced and just kind of like quit everything, but it was a good pickup. And then about 3 or 4 weeks after that, Saul came in for the class, and it was just awesome, you know, just to see him, big old smile on my face, his face. It's like we were friends the whole time, even though I didn't like him at first.
Marcos, how about you?
I'm trying to remember. I remember because I didn't really pay attention the first 2 weeks of class. I kind of just went to get off work because I worked in the kitchen. I was like, I don't want to work. I'd rather, I love being in the mods, so I'll go through the motions. But Paul got me. And walking down the stairs one time, and because we always used to discuss literature, and Paul was like, he's like, hey man, you're a bright dude, and want to do a class? And I was like, what'd I get? And, you know, I mean, we BS for a little bit, and I ended up taking him up on his offer to do the class. And Saul walks in, and I see this dude with like this French beret, and you know, like I don't know what it's called. You know, I just seen him walk in, and I was like, "Who is this posh mother?" You know, and he had like a long ponytail, and I was like, "All right, let's see how this goes." You know, he's probably gonna teach us to hug trees and eat granola, and he was great, man. He blew my mind. Being able to. He did not baby us. He started throwing stuff at us just right away, like ethics and infinity, and we were reading Nietzsche, and we were reading Kierkegaard. We did a Havel. We did so much, and I was like, what are we doing? That it made me like, all right, I was cocky, I was arrogant. I thought I, you know, was very intelligent. When I took his class, I was humbled. I was like, whoa, all right, well, we gotta start from the ground up here. So I was hooked after that, and I kept asking him after class, hey, you got any good reading? You got any good reading? And then we ended up clicking, and he's like, you got to read Subcomandante Marcos. You got to read this. I was asking him about more stuff about my culture, about the Hispanic culture, and especially that in Mexico. And he was like, you're named after him, man. You got to read this dude named Subcomandante Marcos from the Zapatista movements. And I did it, and I was hooked. and I learned what it meant to be thy brother's keeper, what it truly meant, and the rest is history, man. I owe that to Saul. You know, that's my dude. Okay. Saul's my dude.
Also, right when we heard about the class, Paul said that we had to fill out an essay on Chekhov's The Bet. And right away, I was like, oh, wow, this guy's serious. He really wants us to engage it academically. And that was something I wasn't ready for. But once we engaged in the class, I think we were all pretty well prepared after a couple weeks to actually start writing.
That's great. Just in case folks haven't seen the documentary, we have a clip from inside the classroom with different scenes in the classroom to give our viewers a feeling of what it's like inside.
Go ahead, come on in, guys.
Hey.
Mr. Alexander?
Yeah.
Good to see you. I'll see you. Shake your hand again.
Yeah. How's it going?
How's it going?
Let these guys take a look and change it for me so that I don't have the happy guys in blue mad at me.
It looks like we are being recorded, and I mean, it's not like it's something new. We got cameras everywhere inside here, so I guess we'll just go with the flow.
Means it's unaccented, accented, and pentameter. You see 5 meters, so there's 5 feet. So you say the robbed that smiles steals something from the thief, right? So you see what I'm saying? That's one line of poetry, right? See, the robbed, it's unaccented, accented. The robbed that smiles steals something from the thief.
The class is studying Shakespeare's Othello. Among the day's activities is reading lost scenes or fictitious scenes that the students have composed themselves.
Man, remind me to never piss you off, because you got some serious issues for real. But I like it because you're keeping it real too. And just looking out for your set and your little homies. We gotta jet and see what plays out with these 2 cats later days.
Baby, you take me in, feed me, clothe me, teach me how to grow food and everything, and then my grandson comes and kills off your brain.
Cassio and 40 other of these guys come up, and Cassio's like, "What up, bitches?" And he comes in with 40 guys, and they save the day. And it's basically, you know, Iago's like, "Okay, so like, what were you gonna say?" And he's like, Othello says, "Nothing, you know, just that we waited around."
Your promise.
What promise, Chuck?
I've sent to bid Cassio come speak with you.
I have a salt and sorry rhythm. A friend offends me, lend me thy handkerchief.
The cat's literally going to go on 4 hours.
So, Saul, I have a question for you. Is this class indicative of your other classes that you've been teaching for 3 years?
Yeah, I think so. It's changed and evolved. I got a chance in 2013 to go to a Rethinking Prisons conference at Vanderbilt. And while I was there, I got to go into Riverbend Maximum Security Prison and see how they run their education program as well. And that's where I witnessed the inmates running the program, or, moderating, leading the agenda, and brilliant idea. So that's what we do every week now. But I think that is pretty indicative. In this semester's seminar, which just started last week, actually has 16 inside participants and 11 outside participants. So it's a big class right now. So.
Great. Now, Brandon, were you able to take classes on the inside as well as on the outside?
Yeah. I took a couple. I took advantage of a couple of classes they had as far as like mental health, like anger management and stuff like that. And then I was there for the first day of V for Vendetta. And then I got released after that. So I didn't get to continue any like the academic classes.
Okay. And then I remember from the documentary, you were friends with Marcos. You guys started talking, and you ended up starting to take classes at UAS. Is that right?
Yeah, well, actually, Marcos and I, we went in on the same day. So
same crime.
Yeah, same, and we were in A&O for like a week. It was my first time getting in trouble, and it's just like, what Alex said, it just takes that one moment and it changes your life forever. And that's what happened to me. I worked for Hope Community Resources, and I'm sure many of you know what Hope is here in town. And then, went downtown, got inebriated and got into a fight, and then woke up in A&O and
A&O?
Admitting and observation, yeah. Okay. And that's where I met Marcos. And then after that, him and I started talking, and I'm from the village, 650 people where I'm from, and he's from LA. So like, I'm like interested in, like, actually I was a little scared. It was my first time, it was my first time in jail, and I'm like, I'm this big guy, and I'm like, all of a sudden you get into those bars, you hear those bars, and things change. And I was a little afraid at first, and then I talked to Marcos, and he just kind of got me out of being scared, and then got sentenced. Then I was depressed, and then started working out, and then just like, let's do this.
Sí
se puede. Sí. Yes, we can. And yes, we can. Yeah, we can. And then after that, after the class, I got out, and then I started working at a fast food place here in town. And then, I got old. I was working my tail off 50, 60 hours a week for pennies. And then he got to the halfway house, and actually I think we got approved to hang out by our probation officers, and I went to the halfway house to go visit him, and then
bought me a pair of shoes.
I bought him a pair of shoes when he got out. I was trying to make sure because when you get out to the halfway house, like when I went to the halfway house, they left. I had a pair of trunks and a T-shirt because my clothes were evidence, so they couldn't give me my clothes that I went in with. And so when he got out, I bought him a pair of shoes, kind of make sure that everything was, okay. I asked him what he needed, and then that's when we became friends. That's when things got closer, turned into a brotherhood, and then it kind of I plateaued out for a second, and then my mom passed away, and then I relapsed, and I actually went back. And when I went back, I seen him, and I was like, Marcos, and then like he's like, no. And after that,
It was because I love you, bro.
Yeah, no, it's tough love is the best love, I think. And when I got released, you know, after my mom passed away, I had a son. He'll be 2 years in April, and that motivated me. And so like I got sober, and you know, at the end of the month it'll be 2 years. So like. And then after that, you know, got hired back at Subway, and then they started having these flying university events, and he started inviting me and started going. There was one at Noise Pavilion that we had, you know, testimonies, and then I was just a spectator, and then next thing you know, he invites me over for dinner, and I go over for dinner, and he busts out his computer, and he's like, "Let's fill your FAFSA out." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
It was a trap.
What's this FAFSA? Yeah. Charge it to my FAFSA. And so like, I filled out the FAFSA that day.
We enrolled you in the social science program.
We turned in my application to UAS. 2 weeks later, I got letter of acceptance, and you know, that changed my life. Yeah, I just broke down and kind of just like, it's the kind of things you know, when I was a kid, like that was my dream, is to go to college, and you know, that was 12 years since I've been in high school, and you know, 12 years later, here I am. My third semester in, I got a 3.0. And
I have a question about the day you get out. Where does that begin? Sean, do you want to answer this? Where do they leave you? Do you walk to the halfway house? Do you get a ride somewhere?
Well, no. Well, usually when they let you out and you're not released to the halfway house, they just kick you out the door.
Into the parking lot at the correctional?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's summer, winter, nothing. Yeah, they'll just kick you out.
What are you wearing? Do you have money? That kind of stuff?
Yeah, right. Like if I wasn't going to the halfway house, which they came and picked me up and they drove me to the halfway house, like right down the street. But if I wasn't going to the halfway house, I got released in like a ripped shirt and broken pants. The button on my pants were broken. I don't know how that happened. and I didn't really have anything to wear. I had a sweater that I bought inside Lemon Creek, but that's about it.
Kara, how about you? When you got out, what was your day like?
Well, I mean, I've gotten out many times. Let's just get that straight right now. But after doing a lengthy time in prison, I remember none of my clothes fit me, first of all. Nothing fit me, because when I went in, I was like a size 00, you know, and I'm coming out a size 12. You know, maybe not that drastic, but it's a pretty big drastic change. And I actually had prison clothes, and on the inside, you're lucky when you get sweats, and those are like exciting things to have when you can afford to get some sweats, and they're usually like 10 times too big, and you're not supposed to get them from other people, but you do, and you know, and all these different things. Yeah. And so I personally did not have money while I was in prison, and so you know, you find ways to make it work. Clothes is a big issue, especially as a woman. I mean, I know guys, you guys can handle that. But when we're getting out, you know, we don't want to be wearing clothes that are 3 sizes too small for us, you know, and you're already feeling that shame and where am I going, and the terrified feeling of you have no idea what you're doing. I mean, and I had a lot more resources than a lot of people, and I was just terrified. I mean, you wait for that day, you know, you wait for that day, and it comes, and then what? I mean, I personally went to the 3-quarter house after that and built from there, but man, that's a whole nother story in itself. So that was one of many times, yeah.
And I suspect that's part of the inspiration for the Haven House, and you are now the director at the Haven House?
Yeah, I mean, that comes from all of this. I mean, just inspiring not just as people have been formerly incarcerated, but then gathering those that have helped us along the way. When we talk about like Saul and Chris and Paul, I mean, these are all people, all the POs inside and out. I mean, these are people that said that word, that one word to us that just kept us going for that time. And then to see, I feel like I grew up with all of these wonderful gentlemen here because I kind of got out at the same time when this was all occurring. I was in an English class with Karen Mitchell, and I remember her mentioning the Flying University. I'm like, what? Why don't I know about this? Why isn't this there for women? You know, of course, because I'm all about me at that time. And so I, immediately when I met Saul, I mean, and I met Marcos and Nathan and all the others that have come in, I mean, immediate connection, and just really trying to empower each other and give that opportunity because we didn't even know we had it. We didn't even know we were capable of that. We didn't even know. Now here we are being that change, and those closest to the problem are closest to the solution, and just really keeping each other inspired and then inspiring others, not just who have been incarcerated, but the entire communities to bring those opportunities.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And Nathan, you mentioned in the documentary that you didn't stop anywhere. You just went directly to the university on the day that you got out.
That's not to say that treatment and the job center are obsolete in my life. I mean, they did help me, but I knew what I wanted to do and where I had to go to do it, and there was nothing going to stop me. Luckily, I had the permission of my POs to go and get education at school and apply, because you don't necessarily get the chance to go out there. You have to get permission to do that. And they knew that I was serious about this, and from the get-go, they knew that I was going to do that. So that also was like a huge part of it as well.
It seems like having that connection on the outside with Saul and the Flying University was huge.
Oh, huge.
For you.
It was great because we were actually doing a creative writing class that semester. So one of Professor Wall's students was coming inside Flying University and leading a creative writing workshop inside Lemon Creek. And because of that group, that community that he met inside the prison from UAS, when he got out, they said, he got out, and that following Friday there was a poetry slam in town, and they told him, you got to come to the poetry slam. So he shows up, and he won, right? He won the poetry slam. And yeah, it was great. And then he sat in on my classes. He just sat in.
That took a lot of convincing to let them let me do that. They're like, well, it's not a job, and you don't really get credit for it. But I eventually got to do it.
And I think we all realized at this point that, I mean, the fact that you came there to just sit in on my class for that semester enabled you to get things together. And as Marcos helps Sean and Brandon and other folks get their FAFSA together, we realized that we really need a one-semester transition. Yeah. Yes. If we could institutionalize a one-semester transition that allows people to get their affairs in order, maybe take a 3-credit college preparatory class, specifically for people transitioning, we could actually be bringing in, I talked to somebody from Talia Ames from Second Chance program. We could bring in 10 people a year to UAS. We could bring 10 people a year. Would you say that's accurate?
I think that's very accurate, especially working with women coming out of the prison system. I mean, we want to do that, but when we can't take a full load to fill out a FAFSA, it just feels impossible because we're dealing with many things as we know, and the community is learning because we're educating, on all the barriers that we find. But we want to do this. People want jobs. They want to go to school. We want to do these things, and that is an excellent idea. I know probably everyone that I work with, would love to do that.
Also, one of the real amazing parts was when I was going there to sit in your class, I wasn't enrolled, but I would walk by the windows of the classes, and all the students from the first Flying University class on the university side knocking on the windows. Oh, I know you! And I just felt like a rock star. Like, I'm not even going to school, and I'm already like, cool.
Backing up just a little bit for a second, Sean, you get out of prison, you have a ripped shirt or a pair of sweatpants. In the documentary, Brandon, you talk about the stigma of having been a person who's been in jail before. We have that clip. I'd like to take a look at that.
I got out, and then, you know, this is like my first experience, you know, like realizing what it is to be a felon. And it's like, go apply at every job possible and think that, you know, I have a good resume, and that, but once you check that felon box, it's like, it don't matter what your resume looks like, you know. Once you check that felon box, people are automatically assume, you know, what kind of person you are.
Marcos, will you talk a little bit about that stigma?
I have I've been told that I overshare. So, and that was from a girlfriend who said that maybe I shouldn't be so open. But a great mentor of mine back in California, because UAS is my third attempt at college. I went to a community college that was very, very grassroots, very beautiful. And she told me to own it, because it could never be used against me if I own it. So I own it, and I tell everybody from the gate, you know, I did 5 years, 8 months in California. I did 4 years in here in Alaska. I was in federal housing for a year and a half. You know, I've done a lot of time. I'm not sure how I truly feel about that, because I tell a lot of people, you know, that, you know, I wear my feelings on my sleeves. But at the end of the day, I hate words like felon. I hate words like parolee. I hate words like convict. When they say, how do you want to be identified? I want to be identified as Marcos. My name is Marcos. I'm a United States citizen. I vote. I pay taxes. I have a license. I work. I go to school. I'm not a bad guy. You know, once you say felon, they're like, what did he do? You know, did he sell drugs? Did he shoot somebody? You know, you get all these preconceived notions about you before they get to know you. And we, as individuals who've been incarcerated, we have a saying, I'm a person, not a number. Because when you go see your POs, they have this file. I'm not that, you know, a lot of people like I mean, we all say it, but I'm not that file. That's not me. You don't know me. A lot of people are the file. But there are some of us that we don't want to be judged by that file, right? And when you have 100 people on your caseload, you end up becoming, you know, that number. You know, Marcos Galindo is 608760. You know, in California it was F22800. You know, now I just want to be Marcos. That's it. I don't want to be anything else but Marcos, because I worked really hard to get where I'm at, and I'm not handicapped by my past. You know, I will not allow it to handicap me anymore.
There's been times where I've just, like, all of us up here now are good socially. We're good socially. We're all good speakers and good. There's been times where I've held a conversation with somebody, and you know, and then like something comes up with like, oh, I can't do that. I can't go out hunting, or you know, it's because I'm a felon. I can't have a gun, and then all of a sudden it's just like,
I can't go to the reception.
Like yeah, like they don't want to talk to me anymore. Like they don't want to hear what I have to say. You know, once they hear that I'm a felon, it's like, oh, okay, you know, because even if, like, I remember in Rosemarie's class, comms teacher, you know, you look up the definition, like Google felon, and the first sentence is like a person who has committed a serious crime punishable by death or life imprisonment. I'm like, man, that's not me. Like that's the Webster's definition of a felon. And so, you know, when that's, if you haven't gone through DOC, worked with DOC, if you haven't been in that world, I should say, because it really is, then you don't really know. Like you don't know like it's different. It's hard to come up with these words, I guess.
What are some practical crimes that qualify one as a felon or a felony? Can you give us some examples?
I work as I consider myself a social scientist now. I major in, that's my major. That's the way I'm being trained to think. Two individuals who I owe my academic career to are in the audience. Glenn Wright, who is not only my professor, but my counselor. He's my advisor, but he listens to me whine and complain and life's too hard and trying to kick the can down the road, and he gives me what I need to succeed. The other is Dan Monteith, professor of anthropology at UAS. And Professor Monteith, I didn't know how to, I am very good at, excuse my language, sorry. And that it got me a long way. So I BS'd my way through college, write an essay here, essay there. I didn't know how to write an essay. There's a formula to write in a very well-written social science essay, and I didn't know how to do that. So instead of being prideful as people who've done time, you put on this wall that I don't know how to do that. I went and asked them. Finally I just was like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what a bibliography is. So I got the play-by-play. Professor Monteith gave me a play-by-play of how to write an essay. I am very confident that I can write essays now, and during writing those essays, the reason why I brought that up is because I'm working on an essay right now that I will use as my senior project. There's a humongous difference between crimes born of poverty and crimes of a predatory nature. And we need to understand that as a community. The state needs to take responsibility. And not trying to shift blame here. The state needs to take responsibility of the SES, of the socioeconomic status that they created for individuals living, whether it's rural communities here in Alaska, whether it's Vadios in East LA, Compton, Bronx, New York, Southside Chicago. I challenge anyone to go to LA and go to Watts and then go to Calabasas and tell me the huge difference between the two. And tell me the difference between the schools of those two cities, of those two parts of LA County, being funded by the same county, being funded by the same city, vast difference. And you're telling me you didn't create this monster, that you didn't create this individual, this monster, this criminal, this danger to society? You need to take some responsibility for what happened, because when all you see is drug dealers and killers and gang members around you, and you don't see teachers and doctors and lawyers, you don't think you can be a teacher, a doctor, or a lawyer. All you think you can be is a drug dealer, a gangbanger, or the list goes on.
Can you repeat that? Crimes born of poverty or?
There's a difference between crimes born of poverty and crimes of a predatory nature. There are people out there in life who need help. There's people out there who hurt people because of the joy of hurting people. There's killers, there's sex offenders, the list goes on, of people who enjoy hurting somebody. And then there's people who don't know how to provide for their family. There's people who only know how to sell cocaine and heroin because they use it, and it's a way to support a habit, because it allows them to escape, the horror of their life. I remember I got shot in the face when I was 16 years old. No, I'm sure you don't feel sorry for me. I tried to shoot him. So at its basic form is flight or flight, living in the barrio or the hoods of urban cities, and to have and not have the state accept some of the burden is inhumane. It's not cool at all.
Saul, you wanted to mention something?
Yeah, that's perfect. In the documentary, Diane Casta talks about a shared responsibility, and I think that's really critical to rethinking justice and community. We really need to move from a discourse of personal responsibility to a political responsibility. And when we start talking about political responsibility, we start talking about things like economic inequality and institutionalized racism and institutionalized, contempt against the poor and peoples of color. And then we can begin the difficult critical analysis, the necessary self-examination. And we're not blaming people. Part of the problem with addressing prison reform is that people in institutions feel like when we critique the system, we're blaming individuals. We're trying to shift from blame to critique. And as we shift from blame to critique, then we're not looking necessarily for causes of recidivism or causes of mass incarceration, but we're looking at what are these phenomena symptoms of, right? So 1 in 3 black men ages 18 to 34 in the US is in the prison system. In the state of Alaska, Alaska Natives make up 15% of the general population, but 37% of the prison population, overrepresentation in the prison system by Alaska Natives. That's a symptom of something.
Yes.
And what is this a symptom of? It's a symptom of colonialism, institutionalized racism, indifference, and that's the kind of focus that we really need to pick up here. And then we're shifting, when we talk about this stuff, when we talk about political responsibility, we're talking about symptoms and the structural problems, people will frequently say to me, well, aren't you just abstracting away from the individual? And I say, no. If you continue to persist in this very reductive discourse of choice, you made bad choices, you are treating the individual in an abstract way. If you instead understand the story of a person with this genealogy of sorrow and joy, right? Structuralized racism and contempt for the poor, when that's part of an individual's story, then you've got a more rich sense of the individual. I think our prison system is, there's a distinction between individualism and individuality that one of my favorite critical theorists, James Marsh, makes. Actually, James Marsh was Martin Matusik's teacher. He's in the documentary. And he says individualism is the quantitative sameness imposed on everyone. Right? And you think about Monopoly, the Monopoly board game, right? Everybody starts, $1,500, everybody's on go, right? But individuality is the qualitative awareness of self and other. And then the more accurate Monopoly game would be where you've got 5 classes maybe, right? And you've got one group already owns Boardwalk and Park Place with $5,000 in the bank and they control the bank. You go down to the lowest class, which begins in prison. This is part of thinking about community, historical violence, transgenerational trauma that gets bracketed. What's that?
I thought you were going to say
Baltic Avenue, right?
Can I interject here for a minute? It's the trek that I made, right? Brandon said, he said I was from the big city. My career as a gangster, being recruited into a Latino prison gang, sent me to Los Angeles. I used to come back and forth from Los Angeles. I'm originally from a small farming community of migrant workers in the Central Valle of California. Towns like Visalia, Goshen, Tulare, Hanford, Fresno, Bakersfield. I grew up around picking, my family picked fruit. I cut grapes. That's what we did. Didn't like it. I wanted something better. I got recruited. I was 14. And I went back to Los Angeles. I was stationed. It's like you're a soldier. Stationed in Los Angeles. And I, got my first apartment when I was 14 in Los Angeles. And I would get sent back and forth to Mexico, because my family is from Ojinaga, Chihuahua, in Juarez, and we got connections in El Paso. So since my connections, I would keep coming back and forth. And the trek that I see from the small farming communities down to Los Angeles, El Paso, Juarez, Ojinaga, and then up here in Alaska, was the same thing, right? I seen on different scales, grand scales, small scales, but I seen the exact same thing. Was that all these communities were overtaken by the prison subculture, right? Vast amounts of racism, and not being able to pinpoint the reasons why. Not being able to, how do we fix this? Being in Los Angeles and seeing a city of 9 million people, 52% of that 9 million people are Hispanic, but how come not everybody on the board at UCLA is Latino? How come your community doesn't reflect the population? How come our police department isn't Latino? How come, we had the mayor, but, we didn't have, how come we don't have every Senate seat? How come we don't have every rep seat? How come we don't have those? It's because we don't vote. We look at things on the level of the prison subculture, right? We like to be in the shadows. We look at it like, oh, well, let the gabachos do what they're gonna do, And we'll just sit here and do, sell dough. We'll run the streets. This petty mentality of how come, if the prison is vast majority of Latinos, that reflects the community, but yet all these positions of power don't reflect the community. I didn't understand that. That's what pushed me to major in politics. Is I see the power of this Latin vote, right, in these big communities. Like here in Alaska, you see the power of the indigenous vote, right? But we need to mobilize that, right? We need to mobilize these individuals who represent the community to come out and put hit them where it hurts, hit them at the ballot box.
Sorry, you guys, we have about 13 minutes left here for this show. Time goes fast. No, this has been great. I wish we had a lot more time. We need to do a full series. But with our last minutes here on the show, I would say the common denominator in your success seems to be community, right? And that's the name of this show tonight, or having these connections in the community. And it seems like we need to build these connections and opportunities for communities, not only here in Juneau, but for communities around the state to connect with the people who are in prison. So I'd like to use these last minutes to brainstorm how we can improve those connections with the community, how we can get more people like Sol Neely in classrooms volunteering to teach. What are your ideas? And I would like to get a couple questions from the audience, or a couple ideas from the audience, if you could, in the next coming minutes, maybe line up at the microphone. So maybe a new voice.
We have a voice right here, and from Christopher Paul Gonzalez.
Oh.
You guys seen him in the documentary, and it's a long voice. And if you don't mind, I'm sorry, I was trying to get in there to say this to Paul, for LC. And if you would like to read it, or if you would like to read it, LC, he's the man, he's in there for another 18 years. So being able to have his presence here would be beautiful. Big shout out to Mountain View. He wanted to put a shout out to Mountain View. So I don't know who would like to.
I think it's appropriate. Chris was unable to make it here this evening because he's in Lemon Creek right now. So to have his voice on this show, I think, is appropriate. And one of you like to read it?
I'll read it.
Stand up.
Go, Sean.
All right. Woo! This is hello. It's loud, isn't it? My name is Christopher Paul Gonzalez. First and foremost, I would like to thank the educational coordinators, Paul McCarthy and Chris Wax, orchestrating all the educational programs that are available to the inmates at Lemon Creek Correctional Center. This is a kite that has flown to you in representation of me. Due to the fact that I am an inmate and so busy, my presence is not available. I'm sorry. Here at LCCC, there are a couple of educational classes that stick out. To have this great professor that donates his mind and time and has helped shape and mold somewhat a monument. Fine University and I am a proud member. I am proud remember. Wait, what is that? The Flying University and I am proud remember.
I'm a proud member.
Oh, member.
Yeah, he typed remember.
Typo. Professor Sol Neely and I give thanks to you for giving inmates the opportunity to expand their minds and for your time for the opportunity for my voice to be heard as well as others inside the prison. There are not many educational classes that are like Professor Saul's that bring outside students from UAS to participate and cover topics such as our class. We are taking this course ethics in the form of philosophy. Thank you, Scott and his cameraman, for shooting one of our classes in the interview. The KTOO for producing and showing their piece and allowing my voice to be heard. I believe there needs to be more classes like this and in form of education in the prison system. Knowledge is power, and the time spent learning helps from a productive member of society. P.S. Hi, Professor Saul and his mother, from Chris.
Christopher Paul Gonzalez. All right, and closing thoughts. How can we improve community connections? Kara, do you have an idea?
I have many ideas, but for sense of time here, community connections is key to this. We have a lot of amazing things going on in our community with legislators, DOC. I mean, there's just so much change going on. And I would say if you see something going on out there, whether it's the Reentry Coalition, Haven House, Flying University, Second Chance Act, there's many things going on. Just plug in. We're going to try and get those out there, but just show up. It is about community. You heard us all say that here. Somebody believed in us and we moved forward. Somebody believed in us inside and somebody believed in us outside. And now we get to cultivate other leaders to empower us to rise up and kind of be that change. And we get to meet people at the gate or do whatever we need to do to bring that encouragement. And it's so crucial. It's so crucial. I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be here with these amazing guys and be a part of this movement here. So. Go.
I think as for people like that are on the inside that haven't got out yet, it's I think what I've been thinking about is like to visually demand a formula to get out. Because I got off probation 3 months early, and the people I talked to in the Department of Corrections is like people don't get off early, and I got off 3 months early, and in March I'll be going back for the Success Inside and Out program to speak and just to give them, hopefully give them a formula, because some people, they don't see the light. There's so many people that, they're uninformed. For the longest time, I didn't even know I could vote after I caught my felony. And I remember on my letter that I got from Department of Corrections saying that I'm no longer on probation, so don't forget to register to vote. I have friends at home. I have friends at home for YACTAD that have gone through DOC that they don't even know that they have the right to vote. Get out there and vote. Let's show the people that are on the inside that there is a formula, and we're it.
Yeah, and you get
We
to
are
run for
part of it.
office.
We are part of
You
it.
do, it tells you that.
Nathan?
If I may, I was warned not to be too academic. I don't think I can top Saul, but I'll try. Community needs to be based on the solidarity of alterity, like the unification of our differences. If we keep judging and othering people because of differences, there's more violence is going to come from that, and that's all will come from that. That's my belief.
Boom.
Thank you.
Quick and simple.
Yeah. So what was the question?
What can the Juneau community
community
do?
do to
What
help?
can the Alaska State community do to support people getting out of prison or in prison?
Just show up. Just be there. Put it in the FaceTime. Just I mean, if you want to see your community change, just keep your ear out. Keep like I'm over at the Capitol building. Advocating for Senate bills that affect us, that affects us and affects our community, and just keep your ear out for stuff. And I mean, I see people on Facebook all the time like, oh, our community's turned into so bad. It used to be so good, and people are overdosing on heroin, and then you get on Facebook and whine about it, and it stops there. You don't fight for your, and
that's a big testament. I scream that all the time. It's like talk is cheap. Talk is so cheap. It's about action. You want your thing to grow, you go out there and you recruit. When I was, I didn't get the everybody was seniors when they came into the Lemon Creek, so they graduated by the time I got out and got to go to school, so there was nobody there. I didn't get to feel like a rock star.
Me neither.
And so, but I built one. I seen friends that wanted to get out. I seen friends that did not want to work where they were working. I seen friends that wanted change.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what? Check it out.
Yes.
This is the way to do it. Education is the key to a future, any future you want. Any future you want. Right now, I'm an intern at Alaska State Legislature, and hope I'm not putting them on spot, but hopefully you guys could give a warm welcome to Senator Wilikowski at Anchorage.
Yeah.
Senator Wilikowski, we had a great talk when he hired me. He told me he believed in redemption, and he also believed that somebody can change if they want to. And he said, I remember him saying, he was like, I'm going to give you a shot. That was the most beautiful thing that I heard, because it meant that I made it, right? I studied politics. That's what I major in. And now I work at the state legislature. I'm just an intern, but I mean, still I work, and I get to see the way laws get passed. I get to see how this stuff works. I made it. I remember thinking when I walked into the state capitol, I was like, no matter what happens from this point on, I don't really care. I made it. I did the full 360. I came out as a gangster. I quit and severed ties with my disruptive group. I quit all that everything that was bombarded on me. I started to see it for what it was, which is BS and evil and hateful. And I got to do the slow trek all the way back around. I get to dress in suits. I get to smile and be happy, because I'm always not happy. I carry this around with me, and I'll end on that. It's my reminder, and I show it to everybody because, like I say, I overshare. It's my California prison ID, and I carried it around because it reminds me of where I never want to get back to. I don't ever want to be this guy, and this guy's mean. He looks unhappy. Now I'm always smiling, I'm always joking around. And Brooke and TJ, thank you guys so much for just being so welcoming and understanding and teaching me stuff, how to email, basic stuff, and giving me tools that are going to better my life. And I truly appreciate it. And thank you, Senator Wilikowski, from the bottom of my heart for giving me a chance to change my life. Thank you so much.
Saul. Last thoughts, we have about 20 seconds.
Advocacy, I think, is where it's at. Last week, Terry Tibbett did a legislative advocacy training for Flying University and Haven House. That's why Sean's been at the Capitol building. There's a bunch of stuff going on. I would encourage everybody to read the Alaska Criminal Justice Commission's Justice Reinvestment Report and support those measures that it calls for, because that's where we're going to make some change.
All right. Thank you all for joining us this evening. You can watch this program. You can watch the documentary on 360 North and at 360north.org. Good night.